in, ladies and gentlemen, to episode number 119 of Let's Go Racing with David Starr. Tyler Jones here with you. So glad to have you with us. Coming up on today's show, we're going to be joined by the newest member of the NBC Sports family. That is John Newby, who is covering NASCAR previously with Heavy.com. We'll get his insights on the run to the NASCAR playoffs. Also, hear his backstory, how he ended up covering NASCAR and the other stuff that he's done. Great conversation with John coming up in just a matter of moments. We'll also take a look back at the weekend that was with William Byron getting it done in the rain-shortened race at Atlanta as he gets his fourth win of the year. David and Dominic will react to it. They were there. We'll get their thoughts from the scene there in Atlanta, what they had to say. We'll have our news and notes with the latest headlines around the sport, then our Ask David segment coming up at the end of today's show. David Starr joins us right now. David, always a pleasure to chat with you, my friend. Nice run there at Atlanta for you in the Xfinity race with your best finish of the year so far. What was it like racing there at that Atlanta Motor Speedway and having a decent day there in that car?
Man, it was awesome, man. It was a great weekend of racing, and our freight auctions Ford Mustang was awesome. When the race started, man, I was super loose. We didn't have practice, and I felt like we were going to be really loose just running one lap of qualifying. But man, when the race started, couldn't get into the corners like I needed to because I was the back of the car didn't have any grip. But man, we kept working on that thing, and we lost a lap, got the lucky dog back, and we kept, every time the caution come out, man, we come in, we changed everything, and we finally hit it. It was amazing. With about 75 laps to go, it was amazing how good our car was. I could run wide open and drive it anywhere. It was awesome. I was just telling Joey Gase and the team, it'd been really cool if we could have had that from the time they dropped the green flag. But man, it was awesome to race at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. What a great racetrack, and it just produces so much great racing. And then Sunday's race was incredible.
Dominic Aragon of the RacingExperts.com joins us as well. Dominic, you were there. Exciting race. Unfortunately, rain shortened, but William Byron gets the win. I look at it two ways. Byron, very well deserving. It was an equal playing field. Everybody knew the rain was coming one way or the other as far as that goes. And Byron, the way that he's run so well all season long, sure, you could have had a variety of different winners potentially had the race gone the distance, but I thought it was exciting, and NASCAR did the most what they could to work with. I know they were pressured to get that restart there before the rain came, but we saw what happened in Daytona last year. They didn't want that scenario to happen again as last year unfolded with that bad crash there when the rain came down.
Absolutely. Darn if you do, darn if you don't. A lot of fans complaining about NASCAR not restarting the race, but all in the name of safety, Tyler. You can't err. You have to err on the side of safety, and you cannot fault NASCAR for that. I think on the flip side, you commend NASCAR for making a decision like that to not go back racing. But I can tell you, too, part of that race was shooting in turns 3 and 4, shooting photos. And I can tell you, Tyler, that intensity was just ramping up. You could see it. Well, I was on this riser up in turns 3 and 4, about a good 25 feet up off the ground. And I have this clear view of the track. And every time they were coming by, every 30 seconds, you could just see them getting a little closer and closer, side drafting off each other, 2 wide, 3 wide. The Fords were dominant. And then you'd have your comers and goers, and you'd have these packs of 20 to 25 cars. And they weren't wrecking. It was great racing. It was like if it was the last 5 laps of the race for about a good 35 laps until that crash out of turn 4. But Tyler, great racing, great intensity. And even Kyle Busch told me that it was really intense up at the front, especially as the laps were starting to go towards the end. And they were just trying to beat the rain, like how they did at Chicago. He was mentioning how this team knew that they were going to have rain in the forecast. They've made their little strategy call, paid off for a 5th place finish. A lot of good guys that needed a good run got their run that they needed on Sunday night.
Yeah, certainly shook up the playoff picture as well for the race to get in the postseason. David, let me ask you this one more thing before we bring in John here. William Byron, that 4th win of the year, most of any driver at this point of the season. He's got just as many wins this year as he did his entire career entering this season. It's been an awesome breakout season. They're the favorites to win the championship at this point. And I think the best thing you can say about William Byron is that, much like the guy that made famous that 24 car, he is a threat every single week. He's good everywhere they go, whether it's mile and a half, super speedways, short tracks, road courses. William Byron's been good everywhere this year.
Man, he's just from the time the season opened this season at Daytona, they've had a lot of speed, and you can't always count out any driver that's part of the Hendrick organizations. But as we talked on this podcast over the months, we really wasn't considering William Byron to be a favorite in the championship for 2023. We really thought, it was going to be Chase Elliott or, whoever, but man, he is the breakout king for Hendrick Motorsports and for the NASCAR Cup Series. It's been impressive what William Byron has done. And, the Atlanta race was incredible. The intensity, 3-4 wide at times. And, man, it was just unbelievable. The racetrack when they redone the racetrack, refiguring it, and it's just producing such great racing. And it was amazing to be there and to watch it. But there was a car that really caught my attention. Michael McDowell. He was fast all night long. He had an incident where he pitted and got together with Martin Truex and messed up his right front fender. But when he got back out on the racetrack, they worked on it a little bit. And man, he came right from the back all the way back up to running second. Maybe he led a lap. But man, I was so impressed with Michael McDowell. He came back at the end and finished fourth. And I would have thought if they would have ran the race all the way to the end, he would have contended with William Byron for the win. But William Byron obviously is just incredible, having his best season ever, and making that 24 car. We're used to seeing that thing running up front and winning a lot of races with Jeff Gordon, but the William Byron has been so impressive this season. And like we talk about a lot, this is his breakout year. And you guys are right. He's a favorite for the championship, no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. Dominic, our next guest, we've shared a meal with this guy. They say when you share a meal with somebody, you become friends for life. So before we even have had John on the show, he's already a lifelong friend. He's a buddy, as David would say. Tell us about John before we officially bring him in.
I'll put my best David Starr on. He's a good guy. He's a buddy. And we had a good roundtable, actually. Tyler had him. So it's John, our Jonathan Feld, Joe Larquente, Tyler Jones, and myself. After the Las Vegas race weekend, we're enjoying a nice meal at one of the end of the race weekend at one of the casino hotels, and you get to know people. And John's got a pretty cool backstory, and I'm partial to him too, because he's a West Coast guy like me, hails from the great state of Montana. We had some great stories over dinner. I'm not sure if we can share on this podcast, but I'm sure we get some of them. And John most recently was working with Heavy, and now working with NBC Sports, the newest addition to the talent team there. Man, they're getting a great guy there, Tyler, and John Newby, somebody that's really quality. And I'm not just saying that. I'm not trying to talk in front of his back because he's here. But John, thank you so much for joining us this week on Let's Go Racing.
Absolutely. Are you sure you're just not being nice because I let you out eat me at that casino?
Well, like I said, I can out eat Tyler, John, David, all of you combined. I mean, you name a restaurant, I'm there. Okay, you can call me whatever you want. Just don't call me late for dinner.
Dominic, you might be the challenger America's been waiting for to take on Joey Chestnut in the Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest.
I don't know about all that, man. That's too large of a task, I think.
Don't sell yourself short now. Anyways, John, appreciate you being here, man. Congrats on the gig with NBC. We're going to get your backstory and everything and all that. But first off, tell us about the new gig. How did this all come about that you ended up with NBC and their biggest time of the year, their portion of the season here, too? Great time to be hopping on board, I imagine.
Well, it's part of the fact that NASCAR is just such a family industry, basically. I mean, I was referred to this job by another great rider and ended up being able to work out to where I was able to transition over to NBC right when they started taking over. So I'll be working with, primarily with Dustin Long, helping him with all the NASCAR coverage, a little bit with Nate Ryan, doing a lot of the coverage of the Xfinity Series races, the Cup Series races. Obviously, I'm at the race. I'll be there working the bullpens with them, getting quotes, which ironically is how I met, David back in 2021. So, just doing the best part of the job that you love. And I can't wait because, yes, it's the busiest portion of the schedule for NBC, but it means that you're never bored and there's always something to do.
That's so true, man. I'd imagine 18 race weekends. You'll probably be on the road a lot, I imagine. I mean, do you kind of know so far like what the day-to-day schedule is going to be like, or weekend schedule? Have you already gotten the idea of, okay, I'm going to be on the road the rest of the year?
So as far as the travel, we're still working out all that stuff about what races I'll be at, which ones still to do. I mean, the goal, obviously, at least for myself, is to be at all the playoff races. So we'll see how that pans out. But we're still pretty early in the process of laying out all the different schedules. Will be a lot of, I'll be in charge of the power rankings from here on out, doing the articles about, which drivers are the important ones to watch each weekend, which ones have some questions to answer. So there'll be a lot of kind of like repeating articles, then some fun interview stuff thrown in there on the side.
Oh, perfect. All right. So no such thing as a day off, right? For at least for the first little bit.
Well, I mean, that's just part of the business. Come on.
Right? No days off. John, take us back to the very beginning. I know that you've covered other sports beyond just NASCAR and motorsports. I believe you're relatively new to the NASCAR and motorsports scene. How did you end up in the NASCAR world, and where'd your interest in motorsports begin? How did it all start for you?
So I've always been interested in motorsports. A lot of it came from the kind of like the rallycross, motocross world, all of those, those fun stuff, like more extreme ones. And then I started doing freelance football coverage, started covering the Oregon State Beavers football team when I was living in Oregon, made it out to Corvallis a lot, covered like pro days, practices, scrimmages, games, transitioned over to 24/7 Sports because the outlet I was writing for covering the Beavers was part of their network. So I transitioned into covering the NFL and started with, the Houston Texans, then went with the Oakland Raiders, then followed them to Vegas, started doing a little bit of Seahawks coverage on the side, some Rams. That year, it was the year that, the Rams had that really fun pass interference penalty against the Saints.
Oh, yes.
The no call. So that was one of those very interesting years to write. So a part of that, 24/7 is part of the CBS Sports Network. So they ended up needing some writers at another CBS Sports site, Pop Culture, which does a lot of like entertainment news, TV show stuff. They wanted to start getting into sports as well. So they brought me and another writer over to that site. And when I got there, they're like, hey, you'll do some NFL, but we want you to do a lot of sports just in general. So it might be like baseball, basketball, soccer, kind of depending on what you're doing. And they decided in 2020 they wanted to test out NASCAR because they knew that, like CBS, they don't have the NASCAR broadcast rights anymore.
Right.
But they wanted to see, kind of see what they could do as far as traction goes. So the first race I ever covered was the 2020 Daytona 500, which was, a very calm event that had no big storylines, anything involving like grand marshals, rain delays, wrecks, nothing, nothing going on.
We were there.
So they saw the response and just how passionate NASCAR fans are. And so they basically went, hey, we want you to still do sports coverage, but we really want you to lean hard into covering NASCAR. So my first full season covering the sport was, COVID year, everything got shut down. Then they started doing the virtual races on Fox Sports. But it was still it was an interesting learning experience because I still got to do interview like Ty Dillon, Garrett Smithley, Kurt Busch, bunch of just random people like that. And then, once 2021 came around, still kept working for Pop Culture, still covering a lot of NASCAR for them. But an opportunity arose where Heavy wanted to get into NASCAR. Like they have a very heavy presence in the NFL, the NBA, a little bit of basketball or a little bit of baseball, and then a lot of combat sports stuff. But they really wanted to get into the motorsports world. So I went over there in April of 2021 and started just going full and trying to build it from the ground up. Ended up going to the inaugural Nashville race weekend, which was one of the coolest weekends I've ever experienced. Just seeing everybody, flocking into that track for the first time since, 2011. And it was a blast. I mean, even though it was blazing hot, it was one of the best weekends I've ever experienced. So yeah, I just started going crazy from there. We started building it up, started doing more and more work, going to more and more races. I mean, I think like last year, our budget was fairly small as far as travel. So I went to only, like 8 races, then the Champions Banquet. This year before joining NBC Sports, I went to 10 different races. And it's basically like the entire West Coast swing, then Talladega, Charlotte, just the really fun ones, like those kind of bucket list races you always want to go to.
Yeah.
Which, brings me to here. I basically started having the discussions with NBC, I believe it was right after Sonoma, kind of during the off week. And then we just like worked out that deal. And now I'm just really excited about the future and all the cool stuff I got to do.
So tell me this, John. Let me jump in real quick here, David. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you were kind of learning the sport along the way. Oh, yeah. Is that what I'm reading here?
You are 100% correct. I was familiar with NASCAR, but like my very first knowledge of NASCAR came from, like a Jeff Foxworthy joke in 1996. So like that's the first time I'd ever heard anything about the sport. So yeah, they're like, I was familiar more to the point where I started writing about it. But after, like pop culture had me start writing about it full time, that's when you're going and buying all these historical books and just like reading them cover to cover multiple times, just trying to learn about all the greats of the sport, all the important moments, all the important tracks. It has definitely been drinking from a fire hose, but I mean, it's been a blast.
Well, I got to imagine too, John, being from Montana and knowing it's a remote and rural state and everybody knows each other, much like how it is here in New Mexico. I got to imagine when people in your hometown, I know Helena's got to be pretty big in relevance to the state, but I'm sure there are still a lot of people that are proud that, hey, John's out there and he's representing us on a national stage, especially with the platform you have now.
So one thing I did kind of misspeak on earlier. So my actual hometown is this place in Oregon called Prineville, which is tiny, tiny little place. But like I've lived in Helena for a while now. So like this is my home. But, even today when I announced the news, like just telling friends and family, to your point, like even, high school teachers were like, oh, wow, like you're a pain in English class, but now you're writing full time.
That's cool.
So being a journalist and having the opportunity to cover most major sports, and I know you're new into the NASCAR industry. What could you tell us some of the difference between the different major sports that you covered over over your short period of time? What's some of the differences? What do you like? What don't you like? And it's kind of cool to hear because when we went back to Nashville for the first time since 2011, 10, whenever it was, man, it was amazing. I ran the Xfinity race and man, got to hang out with Pitbull and next thing you know, I'm freaking the Kid Rock. It was amazing. All the country stars and all the people that were there. It was a big event. We just raced there a couple of weeks ago, and Tyler was there with us. But man, that was a really cool event. And but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on as a journalist, through all your career and the different sports you covered, what are some of the differences that you see NASCAR compared to other major sports that you covered?
Absolutely. Well, right before I get into that, I do have to say I still have photos on my cell phone of your Whataburger car from that weekend, because that's the first weekend that I met you and I met Tommy Joe Martins. Yeah, that was one of those ones like wandering around talking to all like these people's like, hey, I need to know all of these different people. But in answer to your other question, I mean, that is actually one of my favorite topics to discuss because it is astounding to me how different it is. Because even going back to when I was covering, college football, they had very specific rules that you were not allowed to talk to freshmen. You could only talk to like sophomores, juniors, seniors. That's it. All these other players that were fresh into college, off limits. NASCAR, you can talk to pretty much anybody you want, which is, I love that fact because you get some very cool, honest answers from people. Yeah, I mean, occasionally some drivers will say some things that they regret later, but for the most part, you still get this really good exposure, kind of get a build up like these different relationships. Because in football, half of them, they don't know who you are unless you're an established beat reporter who's covering a team for 40 years.
Right.
They're just like, hey, it's the guy with the glasses. And then one of my other things that I love that I really talk about a lot, especially when I talk to family members who they've never really been interested in NASCAR, but now that like I'm doing this job, they they have to kind of fake that they support it. And so they'll ask you, like, what makes NASCAR so special? And it's like, if you're standing there on the grid, you're going to see Steve Phelps walking around. You're going to see Elton Sawyer walking around. You're just going to see all these guys, maybe wearing like a collared shirt and jeans, but they're not surrounded by bodyguards. They don't have like this entourage pushing people away. They'll just walk up and just have a random conversation with somebody. I mean, I've talked to Steve Phelps probably 30 times, even before he even knew who I was. He would just, see me standing in the garage area and be like, hey, let's go talk to this guy, have a good conversation. Excuse me. And I think that is, one of the things that makes NASCAR special is that, like I keep going back to, it is such that family thing to where whether it's like team executives, drivers, crew members, NASCAR executives, whoever it is, they're willing to have these conversations with you, whether you're a rider or a fan. It's just, you don't see that in a lot of other sports.
Well, go ahead, David.
Yeah, no doubt about that. That's it's interesting to hear your perspective on that, and again, it is such a big family sport. It's a small industry if you really think of it, and man, Steve Phelps, Steve O'Donnell, just Joe Gibbs, all these people, man, they're just great people. And even though Steve Phelps is the president of NASCAR, he's just a great guy. And like you said, he's very approachable, just a normal guy that have a great conversation with you. One of the things I want to say, you should be proud of your accomplishments, because, hearing your story from when it started and all the different people that you've written for, it's pretty awesome to climb up. And I, as a journalist, I'm not a journalist, don't really know anything about that side of it, but when you start saying, hey, I work for NBC, CB, all the different people you work for, you got to be proud of what it's turned into. There's a lot of people involved in the media for years and years, and they really have that ultimate dream job. They'll tell you what it is when you ask them, but some of them, you know what I mean? And in your short period of time kind of covering the sport, it's amazing how where you're at now, you know what I mean? So congratulations to you. It's pretty cool.
Well,
you
thank you.
Must be really good at what you know what I mean?
No, I appreciate that. And it's one of those things I never take for granted, because before I even, got into writing at all, when I was doing like college stuff at night, I was working full time at sign shops. So I spent, over a decade in the sign industry, building like freeway signs, installing business signs, sticking decals on cars. So just going from some of those different kind of like manufacturing industries to being able to do this, I mean, it's just a dream.
That's crazy. I didn't know that. You went from manufacturing signs to now covering NASCAR. What a world. I of all the things you thought you'd be doing, I bet covering NASCAR from when you were working in manufacturing wasn't going to be one of them.
Oh, absolutely not.
That's incredible. John, you and I both have similar backgrounds. I work outside of NASCAR as well myself, covering the NFL and a little bit of college football. And it's so interesting. I think the last time I saw you, we were back in Talladega, and it was the day of the race. And here we are, you and I having breakfast with Richard Childress and Kyle Busch and Austin Dillon. I mean, what other universe? That's not happening. We're not on an NFL game day having breakfast with Patrick Mahomes, or
nope.
Rodgers. I mean, it's just a whole different element. I mean, it makes our jobs easier, but at the same time, like, you kind of toe a line too of, hey, I got to be fair, but I can't be their friend either of some sorts. Makes things interesting.
Oh, absolutely. Which I do love when you're in the media center doing, like some press conference, because the drivers, the teams, they're all so aware of everything you write about it. So you've seen it a couple times. You'll see like a driver look at a specific rider, like, "Hey, you wrote something that I did not appreciate." Then they may, give a little bit of a snarky answer, which it just adds a little bit of fun to that whole conversation.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, that's got to be interesting to think about. David, I don't know if I've ever asked you this. Have you ever had a bone to pick or an axe to grind with a media member of sorts?
That's a great question.
Man, I never have, and back when I was very, very competitive, and I always just thought, the racing, the radio personalities, and the TV commentators, and all the journalists, everybody was just, you're honored when they write about you and write about your story, and if you're struggling or not struggling, and just I always thought, it's almost like you got to pinch yourself because you can't believe that somebody would really want to talk to you, after you made it into the industry for years and you're winning races and running good. I always just thought it was an honor, and there might have been once or twice, that I saw something that somebody had written that, it's kind of interesting, their take on what I told them, but I was still just kind of, I never, I was very thankful for the ones that covered me personally and my racing teams, but I've never had a beef with any type of media type people. You know what I mean? It's just, I just thought, whether it covered me, my racing team, our sponsors, or the sport, I was just always humbled and thanked them, you know what I mean? Because, look at, all you guys are great journalists, and there's a lot of you guys out there, and when you have as many we have in our sport of NASCAR racing, I mean, I just think it's cool that they gravitate to our sport, when they could cover the NFL, Major League Baseball, it's just I don't know, I always just thought it was an honor, and I was just privileged that they would even talk to me, you know what I mean? So even when somebody interviewed me and twisted it maybe different than what I said, I never really went out of my way to say anything to them because I was just still honored they gave me the time of day.
Well, and Tyler, I got to say, too, a few years back, we were sitting there, and I won't name the driver because he races in the Cup Series now, but we were invited to like a breakfast at Daytona ahead of the Truck Series race. And we're chatting with this driver, and we got on the topic of media coverage. And David, I'm curious if you've ever done this, because he was telling me like kind of what you're echoing with your statements. It was an honor. It's always an honor when somebody's writing about you and your team. And after a race weekend, he would go and Google his name to see what stories would come up, and he would just kind of read those like before bed or just whenever, just on some downtime. He would read what all the outlets were writing about him. Have you ever done anything like that?
I never have, but when I got out of the race car at Atlanta Saturday night, I was, it was just a lot of emotions, but I was just so happy with my team, even though we didn't set the world on fire, but just the determination and to keep fighting and to make a car night and day difference and get it where it was perfect. I was really impressed with my team and the crew chief, and man, it was, so I had a lot of cheers, and it was just a great night to we had a good race. Yeah, I'd like to have finished a lot better, but compared to where we started at. And then I helped my team push the car back to the garage, and then when I got through doing that, a reporter asked me, he said, "Mr. Starr, you got a minute?" I said, "Yes, sir." I don't remember who he was, but he told me he was. He said, "Man, I've been watching you for years, and man, I just, I've watched you walk back here. You're smiling." And he just said, "Man, is this still fun after all these years?" And and I just said, "Man, I said I love it. I didn't win the race, and when the race started, we wasn't very competitive. But man, I'm so thankful for freight auctions to sponsor my race car." To be driving for Joey Gase, and there's all kinds of stories in a race, not just the team that won the race. You know what I mean? And he was just he was really cool. Asked me some great questions. He said, "Man, I've been watching you forever." And he asked me some stuff about way back when, and he just said, "Man, I just think it's cool that you're still out here racing." And I said, "Well, man, I think it's cool that you come over here to interview me." And He said, really? I said, no. I said, man, I'm honored that you over here asking me questions. He was shocked that I was, that I told him that. But it's just, man, for you guys, all of you guys that give the sport, the teams, the crew members, the owners, the drivers. There's so many great stories in our small world of professional NASCAR racing. You guys are so important. And, I'd hate to think of any race car driver that races in NASCAR, whether you're talking about the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series, Xfinity Series, or the Cup Series. There's not, if you really look at it, I mean, I don't even think that amounts to 100 NASCAR drivers in the world, and I would hope that all of them would be appreciative of you guys, because, man, y'all really is the ones that really put our sport on the forefront of the great fans we have, and showcase the drivers, the crew members, and the crew chiefs, and the team owners, and the sponsors. You guys are responsible for lots and lots of that. So I hate to hear when there's any negative talking about the media, because the sport needs you guys.
Well, John, along those same lines, I would say, and I'd be curious if you agree or not, the biggest misconception I think about the work we do, specifically in NASCAR and the sports world, is that we're not out to get these drivers or these athletes. If there's negative news, not our fault that there's negative news. It just happens to be that way. We got a job to report and do our job like that. Sure, I've worked on the news side of things. I've seen that there's some people out to try to cover bad stories and out to get people at that end. But for the most part, in sports, and especially in NASCAR, that's just simply not the case.
No, the only times you see anything like that is when it's one of those, I don't know the proper term for it, but kind of like those kind of like random bot, like YouTube channels or websites that just kind of take a quote and then crank out like a headline that's just super clickbaity. But the actual, like riders themselves who are going to the races, doing the interviews, if there's negative news, we have to cover it, but it's in how you cover it, very factual, straightforward. Here's all the details you need to know. Not, something like, oh, this person brought shame to his team, That's the thing, is like you have to keep that opinion out of it. And it's not very prevalent in NASCAR at all. I mean, everyone from what I've seen does a very good job about keeping it just straightforward, especially if it's something negative. And even if it's, a driver insulting another driver, or like, what was it last year when you had a lot of drivers being outspoken about the safety of the next gen car and, the communications with NASCAR themselves. You didn't see a lot of headlines being like Kyle Busch or Kevin Harvick are out to get NASCAR. It's just, here's the quote from Kevin Harvick, and that's it. And then there'd be like the response from NASCAR in there as well. Like, here's what NASCAR issued in a statement in response to that. Just keeping it very straightforward.
Right. But man, I think that's the way to do it. Right? You just want to present the facts and let people decide from there. Here's the information. Here's what one side said. Here's what the second side said. Or what if it's two sides or all sides? That's the way I would say, Tyler, 99% of all journalists operate. They just want to present the facts and let people come to their own conclusions based on said facts.
David, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I just, we have our NASCAR world, auto racing. Man, you have such a big following, huge following. You're always surprised when you find out, this person or this person that you met, or this doctor or whoever, that they're huge, auto racing fans, motorsports fans, and it's just amazing. But, when you bring behind the scenes story to the fans of the sport, that's a big deal what you guys do, and people are so hungry and so interested to see what you guys write about behind the scenes, and being journalists and giving that information to our fans. That's a big deal, man. People love that, and if like you said, whether it's beautiful, ugly, or whatever it may be, you're just stating the facts and giving the information, and man, the fans love it. You know what I mean? So I just encourage you guys that, obviously all of you have done well, and John, congratulations for going to work for NBC. That's pretty awesome. And keep doing what y'all are doing. Obviously, it was work for all of you guys.
Well, thank you.
John, one more thing before we move on here. I got to ask you. We mentioned it's not very often you talk about somebody from the Pacific Northwest covering NASCAR and being a NASCAR fan and living in Montana and everything too. What's the most unique or best part about that part of the country that stands out to you? I imagine you got to be pretty proud to be from that area, that part of the country, for you to stay there as long as you have.
It's the mountains, because I love doing anything outdoors, whether it's hunting, fishing, hiking. And just the fact that, I mean, like, even where I live, it's not the prettiest part of Montana. There's some parts that are ugly. But in the middle of my town, there's a mountain. Then about 2 minutes outside of town, there's mountains where they have hundreds of mountain bike classes for the youngsters in town. So if I have a free couple hours on, before the race or something like that, I can just hop in my car, drive 10 minutes to the center of town, and then go climb a mountain. And I just love the fact that that's prevalent here in Montana. It was also prevalent in the part of Oregon I live too. There was just always something really cool outdoor to do, whether it was, like I said, hunting, fishing, hiking. There's just always something really fun, and it's gorgeous.
Man,
sounds pretty awesome, John. As far as I'm concerned, we got to drive 1,000 miles or hundreds and hundreds of miles to even see a hill where we live. I can't imagine growing up in Montana and the mountains and the nature and fishing and hunting. Man, what a great life you have.
Hopefully you still find some of that in Charlotte to some extent when you get out that way, John. But John's going to stick around. We got still more to get to. News and Notes is next. Ask David coming up in just a bit. But Dominic, go ahead and take us away. Plenty of headlines to get to the sport this week. Where shall we start?
Well, let Lisa take you away. Let's go out of the country for this one. NASCAR insiders are saying that we might be going racing in Canada in 2024. Fox Sports and Bob Pockrass more specifically are reporting that NASCAR personnel are starting to tell rumblings around the industry of people, hey, get your passports ready. We're going racing in Canada in 2024. Although nothing is confirmed at this time, no circuit has been announced, no deal has been announced thus far. The 2024 schedule is yet to be released. Tyler, you got to wonder, there's a few tracks. We have Montreal. We've got Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. There's a few places we could visit as a NASCAR industry, and the Cup Series has not made that trek to Canada in over 60 years. 2024 could be the year that happens.
Well, my buddy Spire from Barstool was saying that he heard from a good source that Montreal is on the schedule for next year. That race is happening. And according to the report there from Bob Pockrass, he said that NASCAR industry sources have been told, get your passports ready. So, David, let me ask you, have you received a phone call from NASCAR? Has anyone told you to get your passport ready for Canada next year?
No, I haven't. But, I think, I not personally, but just hearing what you guys are saying and hearing some rumblings in the garage. I mean, we have so many Canadians that are huge fans of NASCAR. Almost every race, when you meet new fans and talk to the fans, ask them where they're from. It's almost every race that you meet Canadians, you know what I mean? And, NASCAR, as you guys know, last couple of years and, the outside the box thinking and all these different types of racing that's going on, Chicago Road Course, LA Coliseum. Now we're going into Canada. I just think, I commend NASCAR. I think it's a good move. And, and we have a huge, huge following of fans in Canada. So I think what you guys are talking about is pretty spot on, and I think it's a good move on NASCAR's part.
John, what's your reaction? What's your thoughts about this idea of NASCAR going to Canada, specifically Montreal next year?
I think it's fantastic. When I started hearing some of these rumors, I went back, and a lot of these races are available on YouTube. So I started rewatching some of them, and while I did not get to see, especially Montreal live or anything, I'm amazed by how fun of a track it appears to be. At least from like a viewer's perspective. I don't know how it is for the drivers. I know Justin Allgaier talked about how he's a big fan and wants to go back. like David said, you meet so many different fans who are fans of the sport, and you're not naturally going, oh, someone from Canada is a huge fan of NASCAR, but it's true. And it's just such a cool thing to take the sport back there. And I love the layout of that circuit. And I just really want to see it return, especially, with the way that like the next gen cars have performed on some of these road courses.
Yeah. And we know for sure already that you got to fill the date from California. We don't know the future of the Chicago street race, although we'd like to see it come back. Still waiting to see for that to be confirmed officially. Dominic, Canada, we've talked about with Caitlin Patrick when she was on the show a while back. A lot of NASCAR fans there. A lot of fans just northern United States that would make this trip too. This makes a lot of sense to go to Canada. And if it's Montreal in particular, that is a very worthy track that hosts some of the biggest events in the world.
No, absolutely. And I think, too, if you want to expand and kind of speculate of where that schedule could look like in 24, maybe we take Sonoma and race up there earlier in the year where the grass is still green at the track. And I know it's a lot colder in that part of the country during that part of the year, maybe February or March, and you exchange that for this race in Montreal in the summer. I feel like that could be a good fit. We'll see if that puzzle piece actually matches.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. And boys, I'm working on my passport. Let's make a trip to Canada next year. I'm all in.
I'm ready.
Let's make it happen. Dominic, what else happening?
Spire Motorsports seems like they're going to be in the sport for the long haul. So a couple of headlines out of the Spire Motorsports camp. Corey Lajoie, their staple driver, the veteran behind the wheel of the number 7 car, is looking at a multi-year extension. Multiple announcements, or multiple outlets, I should say, are reporting that is being finalized, and team owner Jeff Dickerson did confirm that to frontstretch.com over the weekend at Atlanta Motor Speedway, as well as it seems like the team's on the fence with Ty Dillon. Based on the Front Stretch article, they seem like they want to get Ty Dillon back in the car, Tyler, but it's a night and day difference, it seems like, performance-wise. We know he's not getting the same material and equipment that Corey Lajoie is, but it seems like Lajoie and Spire Motorsports are looking at a 4th year of racing on the track together in 2024 and possibly beyond.
David, Corey, well-deserving, no question. He's done a really good job with what he's had to work with. That second car, if it's not Ty Dillon there's a guy in the truck series that's doing pretty dang well, that's catching some attention, that did a really good job filling in for Corey Lajoie. Carson Hocevar, I think, is very worthy, and I'd love to see him get a shot full-time in Cup next year in that ride potentially.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I look for him. We see him in the Xfinity Series a little bit here and there, and it's with Spire Motorsports. But Corey Lajoie, man, what he's done with Spires the last, I think, 3 years, 4 years, however long it's been, every year that team gets stronger and stronger. And I think, signing a multiple-year contract, keeping Corey Lajoie in that car is just going to make that nucleus of that team stronger. And, they got some great funding with some great sponsors. And I believe we'll see Corey sign that contract. And Corey hasn't won a race yet, but obviously he's been close. And I just look for bigger things and some wins coming up with Corey Lajoie and Spire Motorsports. I think Corey, if he didn't sign that contract and didn't keep that, keep the momentum rolling with that team, I don't know. I think it's a great opportunity for Corey, and you're right. What's the kid's name in the truck series? Carson
Hocevar, yeah.
And he did a tremendous job when he stepped in to drive Corey Lajoie's Cup car at St. Louis. I mean, I think he drove up to 13th or 14th and was running there before he had a brake rotor explode on him. But man, the kid has been impressive no matter what type of race car he drives. I think we'll see him in Cup next year, is my opinion, and I think we'll see him there with Spire Motorsports.
John, the Spire program, they've improved year by year. Corey Lajoie, we mentioned he's done a good job. Obviously, they don't have some of the resources of these other teams, but they are a Hendrick affiliate team there. That organization, they made it clear they're not selling their Chargers. They're sticking around. What do you make of that program and the improvements that we've seen there from that organization?
I mean, obviously, as we've talked about, there have been struggles, especially with the second car. But when you think about just their brief history in the sport, like, yes, they have the win with Justin Haley, but I mean, like, range shortened strategy play. But if you look at how they've improved steadily, year after year, especially with like Corey being there and having that veteran presence to give all of the different information they need. I mean, he just keeps getting better and better. And then just the fact, I mean, think about when they first started. Would you have thought about them expanding into the truck series and the Xfinity series? And like, yes, they're still part-time efforts, but look at the way they've produced. William Byron won their first year in the truck series. Alex Bowman, he was in a position to win at Coda, but contact with Stuart Friesen and Kyle Busch kind of ended his day with the damage. You've had all these other drivers, and Kyle Larson went out and just dominated that truck series race. And then with them moving into the Xfinity series this year for the first time, going back to your comment about Hocevar, I mean, that kid, he deserved some criticism early in his career for some like the intentional spins or hooking drivers, but he's really cleaned up and he started just performing on a consistent basis. He's always had talent, but he just cleaned up a couple things that he needed to. And it's amazing to me, like how quickly he's been able to adapt to whatever car he's going in. I know part of it comes from his different racing series that he's competed in. But like he's been so good in the Xfinity series. What was it? I think he's top 10 every single race. Then in the Cup series, he was running extremely well before the mechanical issue. I mean, you keep seeing Spire grow better and better each season, and I'm glad that they're not selling that second charter. I mean, just keep building it because I could see to where they are consistently contending for wins if they keep on this path.
Right. And maybe I'll add this one more comment, Dominic, and then we move on to look ahead to this weekend here. Maybe, you've seen Joe Gibbs, like they've added an investment partner to put some more money behind them to be able to negotiate some more business to business stuff. And we know about Roush, of course, with the Fenway Sports Group and the money they have behind there. Maybe for Spire, it's finding an investor or something, just getting some more money behind them of some sorts. Maybe it's a name like getting a Dale Earnhardt Jr., who we've already seen, work with that organization sponsorship-wise with Dirty Mo Media or something like that. Maybe it's just getting some extra money that could get that team where they need to go without having to sell the charters to be at a competitive level of some sorts. If they could do that, that could certainly go a long way because not everybody can buy charters to begin with. Dominic, this weekend, the race that's ahead, we're off to New England for the first time this year, a track that we've raced at many times in the NASCAR Cup Series. Used to be twice a year, only once a year now.
Exactly. It's the 51st installment of the Magic Mile in the NASCAR Cup Series. NASCAR started racing there in 1993 when the schedule moved from 29 races to 30 races. So there's a little bit of a history nugget there for you. But we have 7 past winners in the field this weekend for the Crayon 301. Kevin Harvick's going to lead the charge there with 4 overall wins. You have a couple drivers with 2 wins, and drivers like Christopher Bell and Eric Almirola, your 2 most recent winners, maybe 2 most unlikely winners possibly at the time during that part of the year. But you look ahead to this weekend, Tyler, and some of the odds makers, when you look at what odds are going in for this race, if you had to guess, who do you think the favorite is?
Mark Truex.
I would say probably William Byron.
Okay. All right. And John, who do you think is the odds-on favorite?
The way the odds makers have been going, they keep alternating between like Kyle Larson, Kyle Busch, and before his injury, Chase Elliott. So my guess is I'm going to go on a wild card. I'm going to say Denny Hamlin.
Okay. It's Christopher Bell at 5-1. Christopher Bell is your odds-on favorite to repeat this year in the Crayon 301 at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Martin Truex is actually second favorite at 6-1. Denny Hamlin at 7-1. Kyle Busch 9-1. Yeah, last year's winner certainly at the top of the odds. But you look at the winner from 2 years ago, Eric Almirola, he's 20-1.
Let's start with you on this one, John. This race, as Dominic mentioned, it's an opportunity race. We've seen guys the last couple of years win this race that you typically wouldn't expect. I mean, Christopher Bell, the win when he got this win last year was kind of to kick off his campaign of when he started really racing better. And Eric Almirola the year prior was just totally out of left field What's kind of your expectations for this weekend? Who do you anticipate getting it done?
Well, the Christopher Bell thing is interesting because if you look at his Xfinity career at New Hampshire, 3 starts, 3 wins. Like everyone knew he was good, but to your point, he was not running amazing at that point in the season before he broke through and got that win. I expect there's going to be a little bit of chaos, especially with the forecast calling for, scattered thunderstorms both days, 58 to 60% chance of rain. And, I think there's going to be a good chance they're going to be racing the rain or racing the darkness because of some early delays, which I think that you could see some guys doing what McDowell tried this past week, where they're just kind of trying to stay out. But I think that one name I think that's going to do really well is Buescher, because he's steadily grown. I mean, obviously, like he had the win at Bristol last year. He's been very, very good at road courses. And it just seems like he's becoming kind of that utility driver at every single track where he just keeps impressing, keeps getting better and better. And with the speed that RFK has kind of shown this year under, second year with Brad, I could see Chris Buescher, whether it be a strategy play with fuel or race in the darkness or just an outright taking the lead during the final stage, I could see him breaking through and getting that win.
Pressure's still on Chase Elliott to win to get in. David, I told you last week, I'm taking Chase every week until he finally breaks through and gets a win. Because I think that one way or the other, that Hendrick team, they're too good. He's too good of a driver. He's got too good of a crew chief and everything to not get in victory lane before the playoff. Chase gets it done in New Hampshire this week. David, what goes down in New Hampshire, you think?
Yeah, no doubt about it. I agree with you, Tyler. I'm going to go with Martin Truex. That's his home track. And for some reason, he puts a lot of emphasis on that race. Has up for many years, and Truex has been running strong last 3 or 4 months. And I don't know. I'm gonna go with Martin Truex.
Okay, Dominic, how about you?
And I'm going to go with a driver that has led so many laps there. He's led 900 laps, Tyler. That's the equivalent of 3 races worth, or over 3 races worth, and has yet to find victory lane at the Magic Mile. Martin Truex Jr. gets it done on Sunday.
Okay, so there we go. That is the picks around the board this week for our news and notes segment that we bring you each and every week. Up next is our Ask David segment, where we ask you to submit questions to both David and our guests, the panel, each and every week. You can submit them to us on Facebook, on Twitter, on email. Facebook and Twitter is @Starr Podcast. Email is davidstarpodcast@gmail.com is where you can find us there. Our first question in the inbox this week, this one comes from Donnie, and Donnie wants to know, David, I really loved the NASCAR street race in the city streets of Chicago. Could you ever pull off a street race involving highways and bypasses?
Man, anything possible, you know what I mean? But that would be a first for all of us, I believe. Very interesting. With the way NASCAR's changing the schedule up, it wouldn't surprise us, would it, guys? We just got to figure out what major city in the United States has the best highways and overpasses. But I think I don't really believe that we'll ever see that. I never really thought that we would ever see NASCAR racing through the streets of Chicago either. You know what I mean? So nothing would surprise me, but I'd have to say I hope we go back to Chicago because I thought the race was incredible. So many new fans put their eyes on our sport. We had a first-time winner from, was just amazing. I think everything about it was incredible. The TV ratings, you guys share with all of our fans, was over the top. So I see us racing in Chicago again on a street course, and I see it being a part of the schedule in the future, whether it be Chicago or any other major city. But I don't see us racing on highways and overpasses in the United States. How about you guys?
Yeah, I don't see that happening. Maybe we can get iRacing to figure that out of some sorts to make that happen. But John, what did you take away from the street race there in Chicago? I loved it. It was exciting. We've heard that NASCAR is interested potentially in taking this to other sites, the Meadowlands in particular, home of the Giants and the Jets. They have a ton of parking there. You could set up a lot of stuff. What do you think about what we saw in Chicago and the future of street racing here?
Heading towards that race, that was probably the most excited / nervous I've been since they started making these big changes to the races. Because I thought that the Coliseum I thought that would be fun whether or not it worked. But the street race, I was so concerned about what a lot of people are concerned about. Are they going to, make a traffic jam? Which, apart from that one minor one, they didn't. And I thought, like David said, the racing was incredible. Even with just going from the wet to the dry and just watching all these different strategies with some people sticking on the, wet weather tires, some people going to the slicks earlier than you expected. There was just never knew what was going to happen. And I think it completely delivered in every way, minus, obviously the big festivities around the race itself getting canceled. And I'm super happy that they did it and they pulled it off. I would love to see them go back to Chicago. And I'd also love to see them, check out some different areas. I know that one of the rumored places is Denver, which I think would be a really cool location as well, because that's a great city as well. And I think it'd host a fun race. But for now, let's go back to Chicago, give her another shot.
Denver, the Furniture Row Grand Prix. Let's make it happen.
Ooh,
that's right.
That'd be great.
500.
Dominic, I told you the street course was going to be great, and you didn't believe me. And you hit out and skipped last week's show because you were embarrassed how wrong you were. But nonetheless, now that I get to stick it to you and you can confess on this show how great it was and how excited you are for more street races going forward. Probably not going to be running highways and bypasses, but nonetheless, I imagine even you were excited about the future of the street racing.
Yeah, no, I like to admit when I was wrong. I was definitely wrong, but I think I was picking the wrong reasons because I had said I'm not sure if this race makes financial sense for the city. It seemed like the mayor was not happy, but then when you see all these articles coming out that the mayor was very, very happy about the economic upbringing it was bringing for the city and all these people coming to hotels, eating in restaurants, and just helping the city with its economic boom. Yeah, that's a success in my eyes. I wasn't sure if it was, but it seems like the mayor, Tyler, when money's involved, definitely will change the tune.
All right. Good work there, Dominic. That's a good man right there when he can admit when he's wrong. More power to you, Dom. Respect, salute to you. Question coming from Jeff. This is for everybody. We'll go ahead and start with John on this one. Best advice you got as a kid that you live by today?
Oh man, there's obviously the basic ones where it's just treat people how you want to be treated. But, it's going to be a very odd choice. But one of the things that very basic was hold the door open for people behind you. Just give them that little bit of kindness and, a little bit of respect and just work on brightening someone else's day. And it's very, very not something you think about doing, but it's such a habit, because you can see people, especially if they're having a bad day, sometimes just a little gesture kind of brightens their mood just a little bit and helps them out.
Absolutely.
How about you, David?
Man, there's been so many, but just work ethics, and dream big. If you want something bad enough, go out there and work for it. But man, just anything's possible if you're willing to put the work in and have that passion, that desire, and you're committed to it. Anything's possible, man. I just from my parents, raising us to just instill in us anything's possible if you put your heart and soul into it, and then growing up, I think all of us, our parents instilled, respect, treat others, like John was, treat others the way you want to be treated, and, just so many, obviously I just think of my parents and the way I do so many things and how I live my life, how a father, a husband, you get from our parents, and how about you guys?
For me, I always remember a specific quote that I always heard a lot. Work hard, be kind, and the rest will work itself out. And doing those two things, that's all you got to live by, as far as I'm concerned. We try to figure out, as far as what we want to do for our careers or, where we want to live and all this and, where we want to go to college and all that. And it all starts with just having a good foundation, of setting yourself up for success and everything else. And I still believe that rings true to this day. How about you, Dominic?
Man, kind of all in line with what you guys were saying. As a kid, I heard this as a kid so much, and it just got instilled in me. It doesn't cost you a dime to say hello. Don't be afraid to say hi to somebody. And I think that rings true today. I don't keep tallies. I don't care if, that person didn't say hi to me. If I see you and I know you and I'm at the store or I'm at the racetrack or wherever I might be, I'm going to go up and talk to you every time if I know you. And that's just something my parents always told me, especially my mom. She really drove that in with my brother and I. And I tell that to my son now too. And granted, he's only 8 months old, but I want him to have that instilled in his mind too. Hey, it doesn't cost you a dime to say hello. It's okay to say hi.
That's great. I love that. Guys, we're almost out of time. So before we kind of wrap up here, John, we'll start with you. What's going on with you over the next couple of days? You make this transition to NBC and your world over the next couple of days. Where can people follow you and see all the stuff you're doing, man?
Yeah, so basically, the hub for all the writing going forward will be NBCsports.com/NASCAR. I'm, on all the social media channels like Twitter and Threads and all that fun stuff. It's should be John H. Newby _. I'm trying to remember. I'm really bad at memorizing the actual, handles and stuff that I'm supposed to know for these types of conversations. So
you're not done.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if David's aware, but he's on Threads now. I don't even know if David knows what Threads is, but he's got an account. And I know that because David followed me on Threads. I'm sure you remember that, David.
Absolutely. I know. I remember when it happened just a couple of days when I followed you on Threads. Nose getting bigger yet?
Right? Yeah. Everybody go follow David on Threads, me, John. Dominic, are you on Team Threads yet?
I am on. In fact, I downloaded the app the day it came out. So, yes, I beat you to it, Tyler. I actually beat you to something.
Did. And I think we followed each other. So we took care of it.
Yeah, follow for follow, sub for sub. Yes.
Yes. Follow everybody here on the newest platform, Threads, where you can see us. David, what's going on in your world over the next couple of days, man?
Man, I got back from Atlanta Monday morning. Just a lot of racing. Team Texas, our driving school. We're busy at the shop. We was going to do some media rides here at the Texas Motor Speedway today for some media because they're doing a tire test. Denny Hamlin's here. Joey Legato and Daniel Suarez are here tire testing. We just got a lot of stuff going on with the racing school, and I'm busy with all that all week. Looking forward to getting back to racing at Pocono, but right now just focused on a lot of our racing school stuff.
Dominic, you're fresh off a trip to Atlanta. What's going on with you?
Yeah, nice to be back home. We don't have anybody out in New Hampshire Motor Speedway this weekend. I'm not sure about our team at Pocono just yet, but yeah, nice to be back home, spend some time with the wife and son. It's going to be a lot of fun just to take it easy for a few days and kind of get things done on the home front.
Very nice. I am off to Tulsa this upcoming weekend. I'll be off the show next week, going to Phoenix, working an event there. So you guys will have to hold things down without me next week, but I'll be back here in a couple of weeks on that front. Guys, a great show as always. John, thanks for joining us. Be sure to follow John. Check out all the great work that he's doing as he begins his next chapter here with NBC Sports. We'll put the checker flag out on this episode. As always, subscribe to Let's Go Racing with David Starr. New episodes out each and every week, wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review or don't leave us one at all. Hit us up on social media, Facebook.com/Starr Podcast, Twitter at Starr Podcast, and by email, davidstarrpodcast@gmail.com. For David Starr, Dominic Aragon, John Newby, I'm Tyler Jones. Thanks so long. It's been another edition of Let's Go Racing. We'll see you next week.